Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming. This is a town hall for Oneida County. We've invited Tom Tiffany and his opponent for Congressional District 7. This is Northern Lights Indivisible presenting this to you. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. I want this to be fair and impartial. This is not intended to mock anyone, make fun of anyone, so they're legitimate questions. Please be polite. We're going to have this in a format of questions and answers. If you've turned in a question, they're up with our fact checkers right now. And what they will do is they will attempt to answer Tom Tiffany for him. And it's not based on their opinion. It will be based on his voting record or what he has recorded in his own documents or in the press. If you have turned them in, that's great. Otherwise, you can come forward and ask your question on the mic. We do have one very talented fact checker. However, she might be lagging behind. Please be patient with her, and she'll get the answer to you as soon as she's able to. So there might be a couple of questions, and then she'll get back to you. We did invite Mr. Tiffany. We invited him several times. He finally told us on Monday after we called him that he chose not to be here with us. He has something else he's going to instead. But we do have Chris Armstrong, and Chris is running for Congressional District 7 against Mr. Tiffany. He is from New Richmond, Wisconsin, and I'd like to welcome Chris.
Can you point lower on the microphone?
What?
Lower on the microphone.
Okay.
Just here.
Thank you. I've been corrected. You can sit down for 1 sec. Okay, I have one person who would like to speak very briefly. She is handicapped, so she has a mobility issue. So I'd like to invite Kelly Jo Sear-Vogel up to the stage for a quick comment, and then we'll go on into our question and answer period. Oh, before I forget, outside and to the right are the restrooms if you need them.
Pop, okay, sit. Okay, lay down. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kelly, and this is my service animal, Pup. I do have mobility issues due to having a stroke in 2012. With Medicare and Medicaid, having those insurances, I am as successful as I am today because of those services, which also help pay for Inclusa, a job coach, in-home help, and all the things that I need to be successful. I also take classes to help prevent Alzheimer's and dementia. I would like to know why you voted against something that would help me continue to be out in the public, helping others, and being successful as a person with disabilities. Thank you.
I was trapped in the chair, excuse me. I'd like to direct that question first, slightly rephrased, and I'd like to direct it to Mr. Armstrong. The question is, as a person with disabilities, if our current cuts go through and the big beautiful bill, she will lose many of her benefits that allow her to live independently and as successfully as she possibly can. How do you feel about that, and what would you do differently to address those?
All right, thanks for the question. And, as you guys probably know, the United States is the wealthiest, richest country in the world. We have the possibility of unlimited resources. And I think it's just a basic moral human dignity, human right that people are going to be able to get the health care and recovery and palliative care that they need to be successful. The cuts that are being proposed at the expense of everyday working people and people that want to work but can't work and are recovering give the millionaires and billionaires more money is just a completely inversion of, I think, our priorities as Americans. As you may know, this is projected to be one of the most largest wealth increases from the poor to the rich ever in the United States history. So I would never vote for the big ugly bill. And in fact, I think the benefits and support, we need to increase those. It's certainly that we don't have the resources. We just need to have the will and set our priorities appropriately.
Thank you so much. According to Mr. Tiffany's documents, his public statement says, framing reforms as common sense. He clarified that no cuts to Medicaid are planned. Rather, his focus is on common sense reforms. These include rooting out fraud, enforcing work mandates, and ending benefits for undocumented immigrants. He remarked Medicaid should be preserved for the most valuable, the disabled, pregnant women, single mothers, and low-income children. To protect the program, we must implement reforms to root out fraud, enforce work requirements for able-bodied childless adults, and ensure benefits do not go to illegal aliens. Mr. Tiffany voted to, Mr. Tiffany, I'm having a problem with it. Mr. Tiffany voted, it's cutting out. Mr. Tiffany voted to cut $880 billion out of the Medicaid budget, and that includes handicapped people, nursing home stays, ombudsman for the nursing homes, Badger Care, SNAP benefits, and many other programs.
So it was just.
Is there anyone from the audience who would like to come forward and ask a question of our candidate?
Steve, thank you. I hope it wasn't me.
Is that?
Sometimes it just needs new batteries.
Okay. Let's just.
This. I really know. But okay.
Just.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see if this works better. Whoop. Well, if I cut in and out, I'll just shout at you, okay? Okay, first question.
They found enough about this right here.
Good evening. It's Doug Schultz from Sainer, Wisconsin. So, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? So, my name is Doug Schultz from Sainer, Wisconsin. My question to Tom Tiffany is another question about veterans. You say you support veterans, but yet you have a voting record that proves that you do not. And just 2 days ago, the Trump administration said that they will allow Veterans Administration doctors to deny care to unmarried women and Democrats. I find this appalling. So my question to Tom Tiffany is, why would you support an individual that does not support our veterans?
Since that question can't really be interpreted by reviewing his previous record, we'll just kind of let him hopefully answer that in the future as that comes up. Chris, can you take that question?
Well, I look at it, veterans, perhaps like yourself, have, made an incredible contribution to protecting the freedoms that we have today, the consequences of, being in war, supporting, the military, it takes a great personal and family toll and community toll. And I think for quite some time, Republicans have, claimed that they support veterans, in their words. But if you look at actions, I haven't seen a lot of evidence of that. Again, we are the wealthiest country in the world. We certainly have no shortage of money to buy weapon systems and all this sort of stuff. But to not have enough money funding to support the needs of the people that come back in whole, in part, kind of, again, with traumatic brain injuries, mental health issues, is just abhorrent. And again, the recent guidance that you just spoke of regarding, really changing the code of ethics for medical practitioners to be able to discriminate against people that don't hold the similar beliefs, again, is anathema to, I think our morals and values as Americans. And again, definitely does not serve, the best interests of our veterans.
So some facts in regards to the VA. They're looking to cut 83,000 positions, 17% of its workforce, and get the LGBTQ community completely out of the military. We also have 45,000 immigrants that are currently in the military, and we have had immigrants in our military for many, many years.
Thank you.
This is a question from the audience. How will you collaborate with other representatives whose values are in opposition to yours? I'm not sure how Tom would answer that, so we'll go ahead and ask Mr. Armstrong.
Sure. Well, it's obviously pretty easy, particularly coming from, perhaps someone like in my position, never held political office before, never run for an office like this. I probably am perhaps innocent, naive, and idealistic about, my expectation. But I certainly understand that compromise is an essential part of how we manage, our day-to-day interactions throughout, our lives. However, the word compromise is an interesting one, in my opinion. So I see people talking about how we need to reach across the aisle, and work with our, Republican colleagues. And I'm all for that spiritually, but should I, win the nomination and, hold office and represent you guys in the 7th District, I think there's something we got to set straight first, which is we have to stop the criming in the executive office. What is the point of passing any new legislation, whether it's even a good idea, when this administration clearly does not respect the law or the Constitution? Following the rule of law is optional. So my opinion, because the Republicans currently in power are not fulfilling their constitutional obligation to be a check on the executive power, that comes first, in my opinion. And I'm willing to work with anybody on common sense, improvements to people's lives, no matter their political affiliation. But we have to start from a common baseline that what's going on today is not normal. We have to reset to a common set of constitutional order before I think we can have meaningful conversations like that. I turned it off.
Oh, this is yeah.
Yes.
Are these questions going to be recorded at all and somehow sent to Tom Tiffany's office? I'm just thinking, as concerned citizens, we held a meeting without you. These are some of the issues that we're concerned.
That is an excellent question. At this moment, we do have a professional videographer at the back of the room. We will record the entire session. A copy will be sent to Mr. Tiffany, and we will have it for our records. And so if other issues come up, we will actually have proof positive that we've requested Mr. Tiffany's presence. And I don't want to shame anyone, but I wonder and question what his priorities are when we're having a legitimate town hall and we have to do it without him. Regarding to the question that Chris just answered, I looked up Mr. Tiffany's record and it says, in the area of partisanship, it's important to see members of Congress working across the aisle. Of Tiffany's 24 bills and resolutions had a co-sponsor from a different political party other than the party Tiffany caucused with in the 118th Congress. Compared to all Wisconsin delegates, he's 17%. That's not very good. Are there other questions from the audience? Right back there, come on up. Please state your name and where you're from, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Nancy Moriarty, and I'm from Eagle River. Go Rachel Maddow. I have a two-part question for Representative Tiffany and for you, Chris. Number one, they both revolve around what's happening right now in the Middle East. And the first question is, Congressman Tiffany, what is your position on whether we should, as the United States of America, help support Israel in a potential attack in Iran? That's question one. Question two is, my understanding is we need congressional support in order to do that. And how do you stand on voting on that? And what would you do? Same for you, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Chris, why don't you go ahead and answer that for us? Sure.
Well, so first of all, I remember hearing that Trump was the no-war president, right? You guys remember that? And it's complicated, as you guys may know. I mean, these world affairs, it's not necessarily black and white. There's been conflict going on in these regions for hundreds, if not thousands of years. I'm Jewish. You know, there's not too many Jews here in the North Woods. However, I am not a big fan of the Netanyahu government. And so as you may know, just like I hope people across the world do not condemn us as individual U.S. citizens because of the horrible government that is, currently in power. So, obviously I'm with, democratic, free people all across the world, including, all the people in Israel, whether they're Jews, Muslims, so on and so forth. But, Netanyahu in some ways is kind of like a smart Trump, because he's pretty right-wing. He's in office to evade prosecution. He's corrupt from the reporting I've seen. I think, regarding the second question, the wars that we've gotten sucked into, whether it's Afghanistan, Kuwait, Iraq, despite our best intentions, which one could really question whether there were any, to be honest, in the first place, they just haven't worked out really well. I think we need to be incredibly cautious about this. Israel does have a right to protect itself. But I think getting into a hot war with Iran at this point, without talking, is incredibly risky. Netanyahu's been talking about the threat of Iran building a nuclear weapon for like 30 years. And no question that other people, anybody, having nuclear weapons is something that we need to be really concerned about. But I think what's happening right now is a demonstration of one dimension of this administration, which is chaos. I mean, all the horrible things that have happened, with executive orders and the different departments, we could feel somewhat, I'm not sure feel safe. That's not really the right word, but all of the disasters, because, Trump's declared a number of federal emergencies to justify a lot of his actions, right? And there is a federal emergency. He's in office, right? But a lot of people have talked about, all the problems that we have faced perhaps up until now are of his own making, right? The tariffs, the crackdowns. These are deliberate, intentional policies that he has set forth. And the question was always going to be, well, things are pretty stable, even though they're all crazy and messed up. What happens when a real crisis hits? And I got to tell you, with a crazy person like Trump, who cares for nothing but himself, he does not care about Americans. He does not care about Israelis. He does not care about Iranians. He does not care about anyone, because he's a sociopath, all right? And then you couple that with Pete Hegseth being the Secretary of Defense. I mean, that guy is so incompetent. I mean, again, I'm sure you guys remember the Signalgate stuff, right? And the thing, again, remind ourselves that all the things that we hear are probably dwarfed by all the horrible things we have not heard about yet. Do you think that was the first time they used Signal to talk about, top secret, classified, sensitive national defense information? No, it was the first time they got caught, right? So this guy, for all sorts of reasons, has no business being in this position. So there's a complete lack of leadership. So the one thing I do know is that with the current people that are, in power, such as, Tulsi Gabbard, right? Someone else, not really qualified, but I'm sure you heard what Trump said on Air Force One when confronted with, recent testimony by the DNI that Iran did not have the capacity to build a nuclear weapon yet, said by Tulsi Gabbard, and then Trump goes, well, I don't care what Tulsi Gabbard says. Well, at least he's got something right. Who really cares what Tulsi Gabbard has to say? But, the guy doesn't read his daily presidential briefing. He is not informed. How many criticisms did we hear, back in the 2016 campaign about, we can't elect a woman as a president because they're too emotional. Oh my freaking God. This guy is an emotional wreck. We never know what he's going to do depending on what side of the bed he wakes up, what he had for breakfast, how his cheeseburger, who knows? So, there are concerns about Iran and Israel. I'm sure there are people that are far more informed that could advise us on appropriate, moderate positions to take. But I got to say, with these jokers in charge, it's a little scary right now. And then maybe lastly, since of the challenges we've had with these unauthorized uses of force, if we're going to get into something, it's got to require congressional approval. How many times have we been through this?
So Mr. Tiffany does not currently have a stance on the Iran-Israel war, but what we have found is that in regards to Israel and the Hamas situation back in October of 2024, right away he submitted a Gaza Act. It's a ban on Palestinians from obtaining visas. He also was in favor of a $14 billion bill for Israel to supply more advanced weaponry and bolster the Iron Dome. His comment is, I believe Israel is within its rights to make sure that the toxic ideology is stamped out. Otherwise, it's going to come back again and again in the future in Israel. He firmly supports Israel.
While Mr. Tiffany supports Israel, he does not address the fact that Israel is currently the aggressor.
Well, I have a question, but I'd like to make a comment about this gentleman, the veteran. I actually asked Tom Tiffany why he voted against the PACT Act. The PACT Act was a piece of legislation that passed that was to help our service members who were damaged by burn pits or Agent Orange or any of these chemical problems that they suffer from. When I asked Tom in a public forum why he voted against that, he said because, despite the fact that every veterans group, major veterans group in the country supported it, He said it was because of administrative problems that he saw coming. When I asked him whether he offered any amendments, he said no, Nancy Pelosi would not allow any. So I went home and fact-checked him, and he's wrong. There were several amendments, and one of which was by his Republican colleague in Iowa, who had an amendment that would allow the PAC Act to take effect 10 years after separation of service instead of 5. So you can ask Mr. Tiffany why he marches in the Veterans Day Parade, but he doesn't support that kind of legislation. So my current question has to do with, I'm concerned about money in politics. My question to Tom would be, do you believe that people and organizations should be able to spend unlimited money to influence elections without disclosing the names of the donors, as is currently allowed due to the SCOTUS Citizens United decision? Will you support legislation to require full disclosure? And I'll ask Mr. Armstrong that question too.
Thanks so much. Clearly the overwhelming proliferation of money in our political system has perverted it in such a horrible way. Again, not a constitutional legal scholar, but I think the theory behind Citizens United is that corporations are people too. Therefore, they deserve the right to spend their money any way they see fit to message for their political positions. My opinion is corporations are not people. They are made up of people. They serve people, employ people, hopefully don't take advantage of people, but they are not people themselves. I mean, if the shareholders of the company want to spend their money to do stuff, that's their own business. But a corporation itself, I think that's misplaced. I think we certainly saw that come to a head in the Crawford election, right? On April 1st, leading up to her wonderful victory. I know, and that's really a part of when I got particularly energized and engaged and, started to make a contribution, at least doing more than the bare minimum, putting a lawn sign out and voting, so attended some meetings, knocked on some doors. But April 1st was an incredible experience, I think, for all of us to know that the people of Wisconsin stood together against the world's richest, small, petty man and threw him out of the White House, right? Now, that does not undo all the horrible policies and decisions that he led through his so-called, Department of Government Efficiency, which, of course, would have been eliminated by the Department of Government Efficiency. So I know my plan, for whatever it's worth, is, we are going to be funded by individual donors. We are not going to take any corporate donations. I am not in this because I need a job. I have one and I love it. My personal, IT engineering job and my own personal company I started, 20 years ago. My thought is that, if I should be successful, represent you guys in the 7th District in Congress, if you don't like what I'm doing, you vote me out, right? But I'm not doing it to collect a whole bunch of money and stay in office till I die. I mean, and I don't think that's the intent of the framers meant about, holding political office, that it really wasn't necessarily a permanent profession that you would do, it'd be something you do transitory, throughout your life. So I think, there should be limits on campaign contributions. I think there needs to be complete transparency. I mean, part of it is just like, and maybe the answer gives it away, but what are they afraid of? And I think that's, a part of the whole ethos of what we're trying to fight against. I mean, they put on a position of strength and dominance. But at the core of all that is they're small, petty, fearful people. And we can't let them get the best of us. We are stronger together than we are apart.
Thank you.
Fact-checking Tom Tiffany's record on dark money and campaign funding. In 2021, there was an act called the People's Act of 2021, and it was pro or for or against dark money in politics. And Tom Tiffany voted no. He did not want any regulation of dark money in politics. Tom Tiffany's has some top contributors in areas of dark money. $120,000 from finance, insurance, and real estate. $35,000 from energy and natural resources. $27,000 from pharmaceuticals. And he also has $13,000 from our own TA Solberg company.
Oops.
I suppose I better not hog the mic, huh?
Yes, sure.
Someone else have a question? Come on up. It's getting way too comfortable.
How do I hold this? It just hold it open. Yeah, just talk.
This is a question I really, really want to ask Tom Tiffany, and I wish you were here tonight. I'd really like to understand why Congress has given up their oversight powers and abilities. Why did you give it up to a temporary ad hoc committee of 20-year-olders who are claiming to do reform? Yet, there is a time when Congress worked together to reform government. It was in 1993, and it was called NPR, and I'm not talking radio station. It was called the National Partnership of Reinventing Government. Reinventing Government, what a catchy name. And what they did is they took 5 years in this administration that they did it in to work with Congress to try and figure out how to streamline the government, how to use new technologies to make the government work better, how to use professionals outside to contract and not use just government people. So their job was to streamline the government. They worked together. Congress worked together. That 5 years, they made significant changes. They eliminated 100 programs. They eliminated 250,000 federal jobs, 250,000 jobs. And guess what? I bet they gave them plans on how to retire. They didn't fire them and go, oops, we made a mistake. I need to hire you back. They also consolidated 800 agencies in the government. It was deemed a very successful program by 2 administrations, the Clinton and the Bush administration. So my question is why is Congress giving up their power to a bunch of 20-year-olds? And my other question is, don't you wonder what they have in those little thumb drives of them? That is really scary for me. I would like you to answer that question.
Thanks so much. Would you like to talk about that, Chris?
You betcha. So clearly, Congress is one of Congress's number one responsibility is oversight over execution of government programs and oversight of how the executive branch, manages those. I've got some theories about why they're doing what they're doing. One is because they're pretty much letting Trump do whatever he wants, whether it's how blatantly illegal, unconstitutional, or un-American it is. I think there's 3 reasons, and my concern is that all 3 of them are correct. First of all, they're afraid of Trump. They don't want to cross him, right? Or his voters. They're going to get primaried by crazier people, which is hard to believe. And seriously, and not making light of the experiences of last weekend in Minnesota, I think some of them fear for their lives from their voters. But my opinion is, if you're not, willing to, do what your constitutional responsibilities require you to do, despite threats on your family and yourself, people in military service, I'm sure, face these choices all the time. Maybe you need to get a different job, right? Because that's what it calls for. I think there's also a dimension of this that if they don't do oversight, they can basically be blameless. Hey, we didn't do this. Now, of course, they didn't do anything to stop it, but they didn't do it. But I think the more sinister reason for it is they like it. They like what the president is doing. And they're totally on board with it. They do not want to stop it. So one could make a claim that, Trump has given them the courage to be completely, non-functional by doing all the things they wish they had the legislative courage to do themselves. So, there's clearly a need for oversight, the firing, of all the inspectors general, the incredible conflict of interest, the corruption. Do you guys remember the $400 million Qatari jet? The most singular monetary corrupt act in U.S. history. As you guys might know, Congress can allow a president to accept gifts with congressional approval, right? And of course, you guys might know that the Qataris were trying to get rid of that jet forever, because it cost maybe not hundreds, it cost tens of millions to keep that thing maintained, right? And then of course the $1 billion+ it's going to take to retrofit it, because it is certainly not secure and safe, But again, where are the contracts that went out for whoever's doing that work? Again, no oversight. And again, gets back to the fact that, they don't care. They feel they're above the law. They are contemptuous to the U.S. Constitution and the citizens of the United States. They just don't care, and they don't think there's going to be any accountability. And I think I, would like to join with you guys to say, I don't think so. You will be held accountable.
So Tom Tiffany, in regards to Doge, what he did is he asked Doge to consider moving federal offices out of sanctuary counties like Dane County. So what he's all about is, let's get those sanctuary counties, reprimand them, take those federal government offices out of that county. And he also thinks that USAID is the ultimate grift. Thank you, Doge.
Wow.
Deb walks off with the mic too. I have a question from the audience. Oops. Mr. Tiffany, you recently did not attend a town hall in Wausau as you were attending a seminar on trans athletes. The WIAA estimates that there are 6 to 12 trans athletes in Wisconsin. With nearly 300,000 vets and over 1 million people on Social Security in the state of Wisconsin, was the seminar a good use of your time?
Well, like Tom, I couldn't make the Wausau town hall either. I had a tough choice to make. I was at the draft in Green Bay. So I was supposed to go there with 3 of my football buds. They all bailed on me, and I'm like, dudes, we gotta go. It's never gonna be in Green Bay in our lifetime. So I, put my camping equipment in my Jeep, camped at a campground north of Green Bay because it was much more affordable. I seriously thought about it. I really was like, Wausau is like an hour and a half away, and I was just like doing the math, and I'm like, I just can't make it. So my apologies. I seriously, I would have been there. So what was the actual question though? Was it,
But trans.
With nearly 300,000 vets and over 1 million people on Social Security in the state of Wisconsin, was a seminar?
Sure. Well, so I think the perverted obsession the Republicans have about, some of the most marginalized people in our society is just disgusting. I mean, and a part of it is, I might be innocent and naive, but I really like to think that, the good people of Wisconsin, that we're decent people. We believe individuals deserve the dignity to live the life that they're destined to live. I mean, these are not choices that people make, I may not be the most conventional politician. You know, I think my wife was like, "You're gonna wear shorts?" And I was like, "Yep. You're gonna wear a shirt, right?" I'm like, "Only because there are state laws that I must wear a shirt and shoes, because my normal summer garb is pretty Spartan." So, but you know, I just think that you know, I've heard from some people going to some meetings that, you know, maybe we need to adjust our language and be, you know, drift more to the center and not focus on some of these, you know, peripheral groups. Well, I don't think they're peripheral. I mean, they're part of my family. They're a part of my community. And, you know, at this moment, when we are being, you know, attacked by our own government, you know, everybody needs more protection than they've ever needed before. So I think, you know, it's just a complete smokescreen to get people all riled up about an issue that I really don't think most people care about. And again, we should not let the vile rhetoric of the opposition to define who we are and what we believe in.
Tim.
Can I have another question from the audience, please? Yes, ma'am. Can you say your name and where you're from when you begin? Oh, wait for the mic. There you go.
My name is Kit Martin. I'm from up in Price County, and I had a bazillion questions, and every day a bazillion more are added. So to try to come up with a question that was the most important to how I feel our state could improve our industries within our state and the monies we are losing to surrounding states as well as Canada. It is ridiculous to me that we do not have, and I would like to know what your stance is on legalizing the use of marijuana for recreational adult use as well as for medical use in this state. And I think Tom Tiffany a while back went to, he was allowing research on it. He voted yes for that, but that was it. That's as far as it went. And Tony Evers recently, and again, I wrote so many different questions, I'm losing the numbers, but $164 million would be generated for this state the first year of legalization of this product. We could grow it. We could produce bakery with it. We could do so many things with this. We could moisturize ourselves. It's ridiculous that we pass up this important business for this state. So I'd like to know how you stand on it. And Tom Tiffany, I have a feeling I already know how you stand on it. But anyhow, that's one of my many billions questions, but I'll let it go at that. And my family is Jewish as well.
All right. Well, you know, what year is it, right? 2025? You know, I think the success and challenges, right? Because I think, you know, for example, Colorado was one of the first places to legalize. There's been a lot of other places that have done. Now their industry is challenged because of oversupply. But, you know, these are business problems. The whole idea that, you know, as you guys probably know, selling, tobacco products, no big deal. Alcohol, hey, right? Wisconsin, one of the top binge drinkers in the world, in the nation. I know I do my part on Packer weekends. The greatest consumer of brandy in the world. So, not to say, hey, chemical abuse is not something to be careful about and mindful about. But I think, come on, it's 2025. We got Minnesota, Illinois, Michigan, and I think Iowa was kind of thinking about it, weren't they? Well, and then Canada, right? Yep. So, I think it's, time to, wake up and smell the coffee, as it were. We should not look past, again, choices that adults make in their private lives that don't affect other people as long as people use these products safely. And why the state would look past new revenue sources is beyond me. So I'm 100% in favor of it. Interestingly enough, Interestingly enough, I received these results of a survey of one of our adjacent state representatives, Clint Moses, who I don't know and haven't met. But it says, if you were to vote on a statewide referendum on Wisconsin's marijuana policies, what would you choose? Number one answer, legalize, 41%. And that's recreational. Legalize only medical, 35%. You put that together, that's 75% of the people think marijuana should be legalized. So again, clearly, in contempt of the voters and the policies that the people of the state of Wisconsin want, I think we need, modern policies.
Thank you.
And Mr. Tiffany's position is firmly against federal legalization of marijuana.
Thank you.
Next.
Come on up, sir.
So,
Try not to hold on to the court. Your name and where you're from.
Gerald Anderson from Rhinelander. Republicans are always complaining about the debt, national debt, always trying about budget deficits. They like to compare the federal budget to a household budget or a business, although there really aren't a lot of similarities. But does anybody know of a business or a household that has financial problems, and the first thing they want to do is cut their income? So my question is, why, if Tom is interested in fiscal responsibility, is he on the side of cutting government income through tax cuts and also through partial defunding of the IRS so that we won't even collect the taxes that are due?
Thanks so much for your question. Again, I think, some of us been around long enough to see the cycle, right? That Republicans claim to be fiscally conservative, lower revenue, cut taxes, increase spending, leave a deficit, and then the Democrats come around, try to clean it up a little bit, get things kind of in order, and then the teenagers move back into the house and they wreck the house again. I do think, fiscal responsibility is something we need mindful about. Again, the current, big, ugly murder, mega murder bill is just an abhorrent monstrosity. Much to the things, the questioner stated, decreasing, cutting taxes, decreasing revenue, increasing expenses, and then decreasing funding to the IRS to collect taxes. I personally think, again, like I've said a couple times, we do not have a problem with money, with the amount of money we have in the United States. We have a problem with how it's allocated. And I believe that, the richest that are out there need to pay a lot more. They can afford it. And some may claim it is not fair. Well, then, sorry, maybe you shouldn't have gotten rich then, But as you know, I think I just saw something again this morning that the income disparity between the wealthiest and the poorest is larger than it was prior to the French Revolution in the 18th century. And things didn't go well for the French around that, time. So, Republicans have scared, I think, a lot of people, suggesting that if we increase funding and staffing at the IRS, that's going to mean, IRS agents coming to your door with submachine guns, mow you down, take you off to prison. Well, that's what they're doing to immigrants and American citizens, through ICE and DHS. But so it's not a real popular position. if you look at it through a certain lens, and I think it gets back a little bit to the corporate, contributions to campaigns, but I would think with the majority of people, okay, I mean, just let's be clear. Is there anybody in this room that is a multi-millionaire? That's reachable. So maybe we'll put it up a little bit. Or, that makes more than $100 million a year? Anybody? I mean, as a person in tech, I hoped I would have. When I was 30, I'm like, I'm going to be the next Bill Gates. I'm going to be living in style, still working on it. So I think most people, that have moderate and even high incomes, there's just no resistance to the rich paying a lot more. I haven't done the economic analysis, but you got to think with, people being hundreds of billionaires and approaching the first trillionaire, there is enough money out there to solve our financial problems. It's just, again, a question of will, and we need to elect politicians, going back to the progressive movement of Wisconsin's founding, that the government is for the people. It's to provide for the services and the safety of the people, be stewards of the land. It is not here to make companies more profitable. That is a secondary goal, in my opinion. And, they make it seem like kind of like an Ayn Rand perspective that people should feel, grateful that they have jobs from these job creators, when I think that's completely upside down. The businesses need to be grateful that there are skilled, capable employees that want to contribute their life's blood to their endeavor, not the other way around.
Well, there's just too much waste, fraud, and abuse. Don't we know? Just too much waste, fraud, and abuse. But I am pro-crypto. I voted on 4 pro-crypto bills. And I think that's the way to go. We also are offering a $5 million gold card for citizenship. And I think we're going to make plenty of money to take care of all of our problems with that. So once again, waste, fraud, and abuse are right there. Strong supporter of tax cuts, and he is consistently opposed to raising taxes on the high income earners and corporations. Next. You can boo me.
If you'll indulge me, I actually have a question. After the tragic killings of 2 public servants in Minnesota, Rep. Derek Van Orden posted, "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes," and then mocked Governor Walz's call for unity. This wasn't just disrespectful, it politicized a tragedy. If you were in Congress, or you are in Congress, how would you have responded to Van Orden's remarks? And do you believe members of Congress should hold each other accountable when they cross the line like that?
Well, I mean, obviously a horrible tragedy. And as you might not be surprised, a topic of some discussion down at the Dems convention in the Dells that I was at over the weekend. It's designed to intimidate and threaten people. I don't think, I don't want to take it lightly. Again, I have not committed ever to military service, but we got to stand up to these people, right? We cannot be intimidated by them, even if it does put our life in jeopardy. Again, I've got I'm a grandson or grandparent for the first time. I got an 8-month-old grandson, and I think, talking to him as a young man at 12 to 13 years, he's going to go, "Gee, Grandpa, I heard things were crazy when I was born. What did you do?" And I want to be able to say I did as much as I possibly can. So, and as I know anybody here, I mean, you would lay your life down for your children, right? Or your grandchildren without even a second thought, right? But I think, this just, the doublespeak that we get from people like Van Orden. Of course, then there was Mike Lee, the horrible comments he made. He was confronted, by, I think, Tina Smith. I mean, these people think it's a game. I mean, they're just, again, sociopathic, uncaring. And, if we can't, agree on a couple of basic concepts, like we believe in democracy, like when you add up the votes and whoever wins, wins. It isn't a conspiracy that someone else did it. You don't instigate a riot, to stop the vote. And you certainly can't do anything but basically say, I join with my, colleagues in the horrible violence that cannot be tolerated under any circumstances.
Am I correct?
Yes.
So Mr. Tiffany voted to overturn the rule that cracked down on stabilizing braces for guns, also known as bump stocks. He's a proud member of the NRA. And one thing that's tucked into the big, beautiful bill is a provision to allow silencers not to be registered nor taxed in these United States. Currently, that's been with us for over 100 years, so silencers would no longer be regulated.
Okay, thank you. I'm Ed Mullany from Forest County. And Mr. Tiffany, I'd like to ask you a question. First of all, being a conservative Republican, I'm sure you're familiar with the Laffer curve. Most of you probably aren't, but I'm old enough to remember that. That had to do with basic economics. And I've sort of sketched this out. It's not that great, but anyhow, it shows a curve here. And what it shows is, over here, you have government revenue goes up or down, and you have tax rates. And then you got zero over here for no taxes, so you won't have any revenue. If you go over here, if you have 100%, well, government isn't going to make any revenue either. It was the theory that you could find an ideal amount of taxation to get the most revenue for the government. And it seems like since the 90s, Republicans have believed if you just kept dropping the amount of taxation, you would basically have enough money. So do you believe in this curve? Or what do you think about this is my question. Again, this is part of conservative Republican ideology, which has seemed like has been forgotten recently. And I guess, Chris, I'd ask you, is there an optimum tax rate?
Well, thanks so much, Ed. Certainly not a tax policy expert. I do have a minor in mathematics, so that looks like a parabola upside down, so it's probably a polynomial equation. But I think that, just look back towards because we're kind of getting set up to be in the same place we were maybe 100 years ago, in the Gilded Age, of the multimillionaires of Standard Oil and J.P. Morgan, here, over Minneapolis, J.J. Hill, the robber barons, and all that sort of stuff. And it was through, pretty progressive tax policy that resulted.
Put that on the outside there for it.
That resulted in some really significant acts of philanthropy. So for example, in my home in Richmond, Wisconsin, there's the Friday Library that I'm pretty sure was the result of philanthropic donations by the Friday family that owned the canning company in town. Don't know much about them. Maybe they're also really good guys too as well, but there was incentives, the Carnegies and so on and so forth to make these kind of contributions. So again, there is not a shortage of money. There is a shortage of will to, get people to make the right kind of investments that are necessary, for the long-term prosperity of the United States.
Well, I may not be a real expert on the Laffer curve, but Just like COVID, we're rounding the curve. We're rounding the curve.
So
Anybody else?
I have a question from the audience. The EPA is rolling back the Biden administration's regulations on PFAS in drinking water. The well-documented health risks associated with PFAS exposure includes increased rates of cancer, immune system damage, and reproductive damage. What are your thoughts on PFAS contamination of our drinking water?
sorry.
No, that's quite all right. Hopefully I'll get the mic right. So obviously it's horrible. In my neck of the woods, the biggest water contamination issue is nitrates from large farms, because again, in western Wisconsin, we have a karst limestone geology, which is, the rainwater dissolves the sand, the limestone creates sinkholes, and the whole point is it doesn't take much for it just to drop in and contaminate the whole water table. Of course, down in La Crosse, Prairie Island area, they've got a real big problem with PFAS. And my understanding is there also is a big issue, on the eastern side here. I think it's just another demonstration of, unfortunately, trusting companies and agencies to do the right thing and then not holding them accountable. I mean, and that could be applied to a lot of different circumstances that results in pollution and contamination, particularly in rural areas or neighborhoods where poor, marginalized people. For example, like down in Memphis, right? As you might know, there's a big AI data center that Elon Musk wants to prop up, and they're putting in unregulated generators that are spewing just ungodly amounts of pollution. And again, the whole point is as much as we'd like to think otherwise, corporations are responsible to their shareholders to deliver the max amount of revenue on their investment. And when there is no penalty for polluting the environment or no tax on it or anything, they just don't care about it. And then there's also the issue that we've seen that some of these companies, again, agree to these, intended regulatory oversight measures, and then they go out of business. And then the EPA is left to, use Superfund monies to clean those things up. So I think, if you're going to get a permit to do some of these things that have a non-zero chance of a catastrophic issue, issue of polluting our water or air, there needs to be some kind of insurance or bond placed on it that you just can't cross your fingers, hope the company doesn't go out of business, and they're going to, follow through with their commitments. The citizens of Wisconsin deserve nothing less. So, and when it comes to the EPA, the thresholds need to be, restored to their original levels. I trust science. My degree is in astrophysics. I am not a practicing astrophysicist, but I believe in science. It's a real thing, and as I'm sure you've heard, if you're going to jump off your roof, gravity doesn't care if you believe in it or not. You're going to get hurt. So I trust the scientists that understand how to manage water and pollution, what those right levels should be, what it takes to, remediate areas that already have pollution, what the level should be to prevent it, how to reclaim those areas. So again, per, Wisconsin's motto, we need to be going forward with this, not backwards.
So, Mr. Tiffany backed more federal studies back in 2022, but not regulation. He feels that more risk assessments need to be made, including impacts on states like Wisconsin. Historically, he opposed stricter PFAS regulations. In 2021, Tiffany voted against the bipartisan PFAS Action Act. He argued PFAS are too varied for a blanket ban, preferring a science-grounded risk-based approach rather than regulation. Who is right? His mixed approach is making cautious progress, but he has not backed any major regulation to enforce mandates aimed at limiting PFAS releases or imposing strict fines on polluters.
Ah, come on.
Do we have another question from the audience? Yes, sir. State your name and where you're from.
Point the little doohickey
towards the, yep. Hi, I'm Chris Hornung, and I'm from Athens, Wisconsin. And I'm very concerned about the way people are being taken and disappeared without any recourse to law. If people, and I'm going to use the word law enforcement here to represent police, but if the police are not following the law, or if people are not being given recourse, it's hard to call it law enforcement, I think. So if people are being taken, held, and are given a day in court, you can call that an arrest, but these people are being kidnapped, not arrested. A big problem for law enforcement is going to be when people realize that complying, they'll not have their day in court. They'll never see their families again, and at that point, people will start defending themselves against law enforcement and, potentially using lethal force. When you can't tell the difference between a group of law enforcement and a group of thugs, the danger for law enforcement, I think, becomes greater. The reason we have had internal affairs offices for decades is that some law enforcement officers have been known to engage in criminal activities. Some even form groups and engage in illegal activities. What we're seeing happening today is those illegal groups of law enforcement at the very top of the organization structure. And I guess I'm concerned about all of these acts that are extrajudicial and being being pulled on people. And I'm asking I'm asking Mr. Tiffany, when and how will you stand up for what's right and start opposing these extrajudicial actions, these kidnappings, and this disappearing of people?
That put me to give you a break.
Well, I do know that Mr. Tiffany is a supporter of the immigration and ICE and what's going on there, but a little something that I'd like you all to know about Wisconsin and immigration and undocumented immigrants that help our farmers. In 2023, a UW School for Workers survey found that over 10,000 undocumented immigrants perform around 70% of the labor on dairy farms here in Wisconsin. Undocumented immigrants in Wisconsin paid an estimate of $157 million in federal taxes and $101 million in Wisconsin state and local taxes, totaling nearly $258 million. Undocumented immigrants make up between 30% and 50% of the meatpacking workforce. Wisconsin is a major hub for meat and cheese production, combining beef and dairy farming into the fabric of Wisconsin lives. Dairies employing immigrants contribute 79% of the U.S. milk supply. This emphasizes the crucial role of immigrant workers on maintaining this industry. Over the years, there has been a dramatic decline in citizens willing to undertake this labor-intense demand farm work. Immigrants have filled this void. So I just wanted to let you know, while enjoying your next cheeseburger, remember, the people who milk the cows, clean up after the cows, feed the cows, process the cows, plant and harvest the lettuce, plant and harvest the tomatoes, plant and harvest the onions. This is just some of the work that goes into making the great American cheeseburger. Without immigrants, the work does not get done. Thank you.
Well, so, I think there's multiple dimensions to what you were talking to, Chris. Maybe the last one, which is, clearly the immigration system is broken, right? There are legal processes to get seasonal, temporary workers. but that's not what it takes to run a dairy farm. It's 24/7, 365. And Congress, whoever you want to blame, I probably could take a guess, but, well, we certainly can blame Trump, right, for killing the immigration bill. Not specifically sure how it addressed, those concerns, but the long and short of it is, these are jobs that apparently Americans do not want to do. I don't know about you guys, but, I was in 4-H, when I was a kid. I grew up on a hobby farm, so not, hardcore production, but we had goats, and I milked them by hand, every day. Had to shovel the crap out of the stables. Took that goat to the Polk County County Fair. Won the junior championship for goats in 1976. I remember picking rocks. Anyone do that stuff, right? And helping with baling, And were they character building experiences? Maybe, maybe not. And why do people not want to do those jobs anymore? I legitimately do not know. I don't know. But industries that are dependent on not low skilled, because these people are highly skilled, highly motivated, the most incredible hard workers you could ever imagine. And it's not just the farming industry, right? It's the restaurant industry, hotel industry, construction industry. I mean, what happens the next time a hailstorm comes, right? Which is going to be any moment now, right? Those guys are just incredible, the pace at which they do their work. So there's got to be a better way to manage that immigrant workforce. There might be something also fundamentally broken with those business models, because again, it is curious that, the people that are doing the work, they're the ones that get punished, but the people doing the hiring seem to get away. So it seems like we're not really got the right kind of punitive measures to change people's, ultimate behavior. Yeah. But I think, if you go talk to most dairy farmers, they want the workers they have to be here legally. But they have no other way to get people that are willing to work, and so it's kind of all under the table. Everybody knows it. It's the worst kept secret in ag and construction and whatnot. But to your first question, is to me, and this, I guess, represents a little bit of self-interest to some extent, but that, part of that's what freaks me out, every day. And a part of why, like yourselves, I've participated in a lot of protests recently. But the federal government is taking people off the street and sending them to prisons in foreign countries without any due process. I mean, that is a violation of the Fifth Amendment. It is un-American. It is blatantly illegal, unconstitutional, and again, just one of many behaviors that the Republicans in Congress are just letting slide like it's no big deal. And as you guys, I'm sure have considered, if they can do that to the most vulnerable people that have very little resources and recourse and perhaps don't speak a language, don't know the process they're going through, being lied to, being denied access to lawyers, they have deported American citizens. And of course, people may claim, well, they were just babies and kids, but it doesn't freaking matter. They are American citizens. And if they can do it to these people, they can do it to anybody. And what we're seeing, particularly with the militarization of immigration enforcement in Los Angeles, the position that Kristi Noem has been taking about we are here to liberate the citizens of Los Angeles from the socialists and the burdens that their government, and they're basically talking about federally mandated regime change of state elected officials. I mean, these are scary times and scary people. Immigration and enforcement officials that refuse to identify themselves. Wearing masks. I thought the Republicans were against wearing masks, right? Don't you guys remember that COVID thing? And we see, Judge Hagan in Milwaukee being charged with obstruction when, from what I hear, basically let someone walk out the back door. That was about it. They got the guy eventually. Pressing charges against Representative McIver in New Jersey. The tackling of Padilla at a press conference in a federal building that he had authorization to be in because he worked as an office in this building. And then the arrest and handcuff, well, not the arrest, but the handcuffing of the New York comptroller, like yesterday or the day before. It is pretty clear where this is headed. They fear that there is no accountability. And if they can go after the least of us and the best of us, like Padilla said, if they don't have the restraint to go, gee, this is one of 100 senators, one of the 2 people that represent one of the largest states in the country, the 4th largest economy in the world, and they don't have the restraint and the training to not immediately escalate to the most horrible levels. They're coming for everybody, people. And that is why we have to keep out there and keep the pressure on. Because, again, until the elections come around in 2026, the only thing between them and us is us. And we got to keep it up.
Cool.
Another question from the audience. H.R. 1280, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, is a federal reform bill that would ban chokeholds and no-knock warrants, limit qualified immunity for law enforcement, require body cameras, create national police misconduct registry, and invest in community-based public safety. Do you support this legislation or a version of it? Why or why not?
Well, Tom Tiffany supported the policy on qualified immunity for police. So he does feel that police should get immunity in cases. That's a bit of a scary idea.
And I think was the question, are you in support of such legislation? Yes, the answer would be yes. I am. There's no doubt that law enforcement, also a noble profession, that people put themselves on the line. But there's got to be a code of honor, a code of ethics that we all have to live by. Again, just the examples I gave recently, the escalation of certain issues, again, being able to just barge into anybody's house, no consequences for using weapons, no exercise of discretion, common sense. Unfortunately, like some people being let go from one police force and then being hired by another police force. I mean, the thing that's frustrating about this, if you guys remember Act of what, was it 2010? Was that the Act 10 stuff where they got rid of the unions except the police unions and maybe firefighters as well? I'd like to believe that this is a problem that the police community would want to solve themselves, because it's just not doing their profession, I think a lot of help. In order to attract the right kind of people to serve with the right kind of training and the right kind of demeanor, I'm sure is not an easy, thing to do. I remember, my wife, Diana, her dad was the police chief in New Richmond back, I think, in the late 60s, early 70s. And apparently, he was just like, an Andy Griffith on what you saw on TV, so not punitive, not, a public safety officer who was there to help the community. And I just think, when any profession feels that they are not accountable to anybody and there are no consequences for heinous acts, it's going to be really hard to expect them to attract the best talent and see the best kind of behavior. So they're citizens, just like we are. They should be subject to rules and ethics. So I think it's nothing but a good idea.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Hi there. Thanks. This way.
Hi, I'm Joe Ponce, Eagle River. And in the vein of trying to be efficient in time utilization, I actually have a series of questions that I'd like to ask you, Mr. Tiffany. So, Mr. Tiffany, how can you justify giving millionaires and billionaires tax cuts? Mr. Tiffany, how can you justify gutting federal agencies and firing thousands of federal workers, many who have had glowing performance evaluations? I really would like to know. Mr. Tiffany, how can you justify cutting money and aid to so many different programs such as U.S. aid, which help not only huge numbers of people worldwide, but our own farmers in our own country and our own Wisconsin farmers specifically, who had contracts with other countries to grow grain? What do these farmers do now? And in a previous rally that I attended, you stated, and I quote, "Isn't it great that we are now respected on the world stage?" Could you please explain how you could say that when world leaders have been laughing at our president? Mr. Tiffany, because you've constantly justified decisions that have been made as cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, I would like to know how you supported Trump's military parade as such a blatant example of waste, fraud, and abuse.
All right. Well, that was a mouthful, Ray, right? Joan? So, can you go through that again? Or
Here, I'll give you mine.
You give me the card? All right. Thank you so much. Okay.
It's aimed at.
Yep. Okay, so I think, justification of getting millionaires and billionaires tax cuts, there is no justification for it at all. Justifying gutting federal agencies and firing thousands of federal workers. Again, to me, that is, again, the executive branch executing a illegal, unconstitutional reduction in force for no benefit. Of course, one thing I've wondered, and maybe I'll get to the bottom of it eventually, is they're doing this to save money. What are they doing with the money that they're saving? Because it's not being spent, but it's been allocated. I don't know. We're just keeping it in a bank account for a rainy day or something like that. But clearly, this is as some of you may know, what we're seeing is pretty much the play-by-play was given by Project 2025, right? So this is not surprising what's happening, and traumatizing and destroying and deconstructing the administrative states has been a big part of their plan. The fact that they fired people mistakenly and then had to hire them back. I think, one of the worst examples is when they fired some of the nuclear weapons expert at the National Nuclear Safety Agency. Just freaking insane. And again, what are they making these decisions on? They're making them on Google searches. I mean, not literally, but they're doing searches looking for trans, looking for DEI. So, if it had something to do with managing trans, neutranium, radioactivity, well, we got to cancel that program, So these people are reckless. They have no freaking, idea what they're doing. Justifying cutting aid, again, as you guys may know, the destruction of U.S. aid, again, another horrible, cowardly act, started by JFK, if I'm not mistaken, back in the 60s. As you said, that program buys agricultural products from United States and Wisconsin farmers and makes them available to people in need across the world to stave off hunger. It also has contributed a lot to erratic or suppression of malaria, AIDS, HIV, and I think, wasn't it Bill Gates who kind of put Elon in this tough spot and said, because of the decisions that were made and the actions that were taken, 130,000 people have died, and I think it's much greater than that. But the whole point is there are real consequences to these, abhorrent actions. And again, bypassing the Congress that is supposed to have the authorization for, funding and continuing these programs. So did I cover that pretty good, Joe? All right. All right, thanks.
Do we have another question from the audience? Yes, ma'am, way in the back.
So,
Oh, by the way, we have 2 boxes of Caribou coffee back there, and they're like 20 cups per box. If you want a real good buzz tonight, we'll sell them for you for half price, $10 each.
Tweet this at night. That goes back. Place. Oh, really?
My question is about the environment. I was just reading this morning that the Senate upped the amount of public land that they want to sell off to private interests. I think it was either, I didn't bring my phone with me, I forgot it home, but it was either 3 million or 13 million in the original House draft of the big beautiful bill, and now it's up to 240 million acres of public land that they want to sell. Boo is right. So we have 640 million acres of public land. So that would be almost half of our public land. And I don't know, I'm pretty old, and I remember a time when conservation was bipartisan, like it was a nonpartisan issue. Everybody wanted to conserve our natural resources, our forests, our the EPA the EPA wasn't invented yet, when I was a little girl, but anyway, but you know what I'm talking about. And I know that Mr. Tiffany has a, not the most stellar record of, on conservation. In fact, he is anti-conservation. He has aligned himself with an anti-conservation organization called the American Stewards of Liberty. He was even a keynote speaker at one of their little gatherings, and he was staunchly against the acquisition of the Pelican River Forest. Actually, the Pelican River Forest was funded by the U.S. Forest Service, and we wanted Knowles Nelson funding, but Tiffany got together with our state representatives and had the Joint Finance Committee block the Knowles Nelson funding. It's like, I don't know when conservation became something awful to the Republicans. I just don't even understand it. But, so I would like to see, I know that he was staunchly against Pelican River Forest, even tried to take away our federal funding for it. He did not succeed because we did acquire the conservation easements in the Pelican River Forest. Yay, Governor Evers. And what is your stance on selling off almost half of the United States' beautiful public land and this land, it's good for us. It promotes, recreation, it's open to the public. It provides jobs through tourism. It provides jobs through timber timber products and all that stuff. So it pays for itself far and above whatever we could sell it off for. So please, tell me why. Just tell me why you want to sell off 240 million acres of public land.
Well, again, as many of you know, Wisconsin has a long history of conservation and stewardship. Gaylord Nelson, of course, right? Also another notable governor, Governor Knowles, which is actually something familiar to my neck of the woods. So Governor Knowles was born in River Falls, where he practiced law in New Richmond, Wisconsin, where I live. He was responsible for merging 2 agencies to create the DNR as we know it today. So he was a major advocate for conservation. And to your point, he was a Republican, right? I've, like many of you, have had the privilege of living in, this part of the country, for most of my life. And it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been in the whole world. And it's a unique place. And I think, we need to, preserve and expand our conservation and stewardship. Of course, the Republican-led legislature has really been holding back on those funds to, expand stewardship of public lands here in Wisconsin. It's hard not to be cynical about some of this, that, they want to sell it so that a company can, take advantage of it for either mineral rights or timber rights or something like that, and not have to be responsible or accountable to anybody what the outcome might be. I think, particularly in this part of Wisconsin, preservation of the environment and clean air, clean water, streams, lakes, is essential to the tourism that is one of the economic, driving powers of this part of Wisconsin. And, once that stuff's gone, it's gone. As you guys probably know, there used to be incredible stands of hardwood at forests here in northern Wisconsin, and it was all chopped down. I mean, I don't know exactly, but how many acres of old forest acreage is still around? I think it's really, really, really tiny, like hundreds of acres, right? But we got the Nicolet forest, 1.5 million acres, right? Timber and logging, are an important part of our history and legacy, but, we got to make sure we have the right proper stewardship and management of it, so we can, again, keep on top of it. It's nothing bad with having some royalties come off of it. We just can't let people do clear-cut logging like they did, 150 years ago. So, I like this, the speaker said, I think these investments pay for themselves, pretty darn quick. I don't think there's too many people that would disagree with them. And, I think we need to make as many continued investments in expanding those public lands as possible. Thank you.
Well, I'm not sure what Mr. Tiffany's situation is there or his stance, but he is on the committee that considers legislation facilitating land transfers. So he is on this subcommittee, and what they handle is national parks, forest federal land, and national monuments. So I would expect that Mr. Tiffany is probably for the sale of these lands.
That wasn't for you, Deb.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Do I have any more questions from cards?
Do you have any questions for cards?
Okay, so a question from the audience for Chris is, what are your views on renewable energy?
Cool. All right, renewable energy. I think it's a good thing, right? I will, out in St. Croix County, Mr. Tiffany is actually, his most recent appearance in the region, it was private through American for Prosperities, was to basically protest the solar farm they're thinking about building in St. Croix County. And what's hilarious about it, in one way, is that one of their points is the presumed ecological environmental damage of a solar farm. And I'm like, well, this is new. Republicans are concerned about, pollution in the environment. Wow, apparently when it suits them. So, I think whether it's solar, wind, thermal, there's a lot of different innovative technologies out there. To me, it seems like a win-win. So there's an opportunity to make investments in manufacturing these products here in Wisconsin, where manufacturing is one of the top, industries. Take advantage of our, talented labor pool, and grow that market, because, the United States and Wisconsin could be global leaders. I mean, we are not the only people that are interested in these products worldwide, right? And there's no doubt, that other nations like China do have a significant advantage. And then, anything we can do, to lower the carbon footprint, of any of our industries, whether it's, cars, manufacturing, household energy. I mean, it just seems so cool. I mean, this is just a small example, but, you know, I'm sure you guys probably have similar. I got a little solar panel thing I use when I go camping. You know, it's like a 3-panel thing. It costs like $50. It's got some decent batteries in it, but, you know, I can go camping and I can keep my cell phone charged forever until the sun blows up in 4 billion years, right? But it's just something so neat about not having that reliance on an external party. The damage that the extraction of petrochemicals does, and what it does to the environment. I mean, without it, we wouldn't be where we are today, right? For better or for worse. But, you know, now we've got the technology, we've got the engineering to do something different and really make, you know, I mean, just imagine, I mean, I'm a big fan of science fiction and fantasy books, but just imagine a future society where resource scarcity didn't exist, right? Like where you were going to get the energy to heat your home, power your vehicle, cook your food. It was ubiquitous. You could get it anywhere. You know, maybe not unlimited amounts, because then people would misuse that. So I think, you know, any way we can get closer to those steps of being more self-sustainable, lowering carbon emissions is nothing, you know, but a good thing for us right now. And of course, I think about, you know, our descendants. You know, we're supposed to leave this place in a better shape than we found it, not worse.
Right.
A statement from Mr. Tiffany. I want to end green energy boondoggles. We want the Farm Agriculture Retention and Management Farm Act, which would not prevent developers from building wind turbines or solar panels, but it would end the use of federal funds to encourage such projects. Taxpayer dollars shouldn't be used to sacrifice farmland for green energy boondoggles, Tiffany told Fox News. The Farm Act ends corporate welfare for unreliable energy sources and ensures agriculture land is protected for future generations. Thank you.
Chris,
All right, one more question from the audience. Because of the Medicaid cuts in the one big beautiful bill, numerous nursing homes and rural hospitals may have to close. So Tom, why did you vote for the bill? And Chris, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, obviously horrible, right? I mean, you know, one of the nice things about living out here is its remoteness, right? And the beauty and the serenity, but it also means we're distanced from the accessibility of a lot of resources that, you know, more metropolitan areas expect to enjoy. So, you know, over in western Wisconsin, you know, we have had issues with hospitals staying open, not having funding. And of course, the thing that you know about this is that that does not make expenses go down in healthcare. It makes expenses go up, notwithstanding the fact that, you know, people get sicker and they die, and that is a detriment, you know, to not economic, but also the fabric of our communities. So, but I also just think it's cruel. Just the whole idea that, you know, living in this part of the world, you know, you shouldn't have to be concerned, like, what happens if I have a heart attack? What happens if I have a stroke? Am I going to survive the transport to the nearest, you know, facility that can, you know, help me survive and recover? And, you know, we need, you know, areas like this that might not have the tax base to support some of those facilities, because, man, you know, the people that work there make a lot of money, and the equipment that, you know, that's used in those facilities is pretty high-tech, expensive stuff. You know, I think it's not unreasonable to expect that we could get, you know, some help to keep those things opening, and, you know, hopefully also attract, you know, physicians and doctors to want to live in this part of the country, because, you know, they've got a great community to live in, great environment, great facilities. So, you know, I just think, you know, again, making investments, you know, for, you know, Medicare, Medicaid, and then notwithstanding veterans, you know, and the VA, the things that are being done to the VA hospitals and VA therapies that are available. You know, I just think we can do better. And it's not an issue, again, of not having enough money. It's just not having the right priorities.
Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, thank you all for coming. I want to sincerely thank you from the bottom of my heart. We really did try to be as respectful as possible to Mr. Tiffany, even though he chose not to be with us tonight. Yes, ma'am?
Is there an online location you can go to share the tonight video?
Anyone who's taken pictures, feel free to post them online. You can send them to Mr. Tiffany. We do have a videotape available, and I'm not sure if we'll send the entire thing or video clips of it, but Mr. Tiffany will be receiving part of it. As I said, that the intent was to be respectful to his position and honestly portray what his thoughts are. If you enjoyed what Chris had to say today, he does have a website, and he is actively running for the U.S. Congressional seat number 7 against Tom Tiffany. You can find him on the web, Chris Armstrong for Congress. I hope you support him, and I really appreciate him taking his time to join us tonight. Thank you, Chris.
And really, thanks for the invitation, Pat. I mean, your organization's fantastic. I wish there were more places like this. And I hope our Indivisible group can grow up to be as sophisticated and offer as much to the communities as yours does.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah.
Once again, this program was put on by Northern Lights Indivisible. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan group. We're the kind of rowdy people on the corner at Pioneer Park every other Saturday. We'd love to have you join us. We're not threatening, we're nonviolent. We're here to protect, preserve, and defend democracy at the local, state, and federal level. And we do have a website, and we thank you very much for attending tonight. Godspeed.
Okay.